This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we have a repair for a gas stove that has a stuck knob. Often this is for the front burner because we use the front burners a lot more. So this is the one on the left, and we're supposed to push in and then turn to the left to get the flame going, but this one is just not moving. So I pulled the knob off. I'm going to squirt a little lubricant in here and see if maybe I can get this thing moving. Sometimes this will work when you put the lubricant in and use a little bit of force and wiggle. You can free up the mechanism, and sometimes you have to replace them. They're pretty cheap for the part, so it's easy to replace if you need to, but here's a couple things you can try. So we got the lubricant in there. Any kind of oil will work. Giving it a little tap with the hammer, not too hard, and then I'm going to try to push in and turn it to the left. You can use a pair of pliers. Vice grips work really good too. So still won't budge though, so I'm trying now with vice grips. I'm going to tap it a little bit as I push in and turn left, and just wiggling it back and forth. But for some reason this one is just super jammed, so I'm going to go for a replacement. So I'm going to zip out these screws, these 1/4 inch screws that are underneath. I opened up the oven door, pull these out, and I believe there's 3 or 4 of them here in the bottom. My goal is to remove this little face plate in the front where the knobs are, so I'm going to pull all the knobs off too. Got the screws out from the bottom. Sometimes there's some screws also on the top you have to take out. I'm also going to turn off the gas by turning this valve 90 degrees. Make sure it's unplugged. The reason you have to have the gas off is you're going to open up one of the gas lines, and if you don't turn the gas off, a bunch of gas will come out. So I'm removing these 4 Phillips head screws, 2 right here and 2 to my left, and they're also helping to hold on this faceplate. So I remove the 1/4 inch screws on the bottom, these 4 Phillips head screws from the front, and then there's a couple of clips I have to push in on the upper panel, and I'm going to move the upper panel up just slightly to give me a little bit of room to work. You don't want to move the upper panel very far up. You only want to come up about maybe 4 or 5 inches max, because there are metal tubes that carry gas to the burner heads, and if you move them up and down, especially if you move them up far, like say a foot, you'll tend to crimp the hose, and maybe the hose might even break. So just come up a little bit, give you a little bit of room to work. So I got that up. And pull that panel off. That exposes now these burner valves, and it exposes the switches that turn on the spark. I'm going to pull the switch off by pulling straight toward me. It comes right off. And now that it's exposed that valve, to get the valve off, I have to remove a little nut on the back that's bringing gas to the valve. I'm sorry, that's taking gas from the valve to the burner. Here's the part number for this little valve. I'm using some pliers to go lefty-loosey to loosen up the nut that's holding that pipe onto the valve, and that pipe's bringing gas to the burner head. So you can lift up a little bit, give you a little more room. Just don't come up too high so you don't hurt that tube. You can see the tube I'm talking about there. And now we're going to go lefty-loosey, get that nut off. You can use a wrench is great. Crescent wrench is great. And it shouldn't be too hard to get that nut off. And then there's also a nut or bolt on the top that we have to remove that's holding the valve onto the gas rail. So I'm using a little ratchet to take that off. It's 1/4 inch size. I'm going to spin that off, and then that little valve should come right out. Again, they're pretty cheap. Sometimes it's hard to find these for these older stoves. This is on an old Hot Point. So GE and Hot Point, same company. So now I'm just going to put that new valve in by coming in from underneath the gas rail and come up in there. There's a little seal that helps it to be gas tight. It'll actually come with the valve. It should be actually on the valve when you install it, a little round seal. So I'm pushing it up into the gas rail, and I'm putting that 1/4" screw back on, that bolt that's going to hold it. Get that hand tight, and then I'll use my ratchet to get it fairly tight. I want to create a very tight seal so no gas can leak out. So once you feel it's snug, maybe come about another 1/4" or 1/4 turn to get it nice and tight. And then we have to put on that little tube on the back that carries gas from the valve to the burner head. And be careful when you put that one on. Just put it in gently, and then make sure that the little nut can go on very easily. You want to make sure you don't cross thread it. It's hard to put on right away. It means it's a little bit of an angle, so then you have to try it again. Should be able to go on about maybe 6 turns pretty easily, and then you'll feel resistance. And then you can use your wrench to give it a little bit more of a turn. Again, that should be pretty snug. Since it is brass, you have to be careful, brass and aluminum pipe, that you don't use crazy amounts of force at the end to tighten it. Just feel where it's snug, and then go about a maybe 1/4 turn more. It's pretty common for these valves to give up the ghost, maybe at 10 to 12 years, especially the ones for the front burners, because they're just used all the time. So we got that on. We're going to put this faceplate back in position, and we'll add those screws in. There's the 1/4" ones on the bottom, and then the Phillips head ones in the front. Just gotta make sure I get it in the right position so all the holes line up. Adding those Phillips head screws back in. Sometimes when people put in one new valve, they'll go ahead and replace all 4, because if one's going out, it may not be much longer until the other ones get jammed up. So now we're going to lower the top panel down again and make sure that it comes down to where it engages these 2 clips. It locks into position. Got it. Put the knobs back on. I think this knob to the far left is a black one. It doesn't match because it was stripped, but now it turns really easily. Brand new valve. Putting those 1/4" screws back in, and then we are pretty much done. Next thing, we're just gonna turn the gas back on, plug it in, and we'll make sure that it lights properly. It's good to wait around before you try lighting it for about 5 minutes. Make sure you don't have any kind of a gas smell. If you have a gas smell, just turn the gas back off and recheck your connections. Spraying soapy water on the places where you did the gas valve installation could tell you if there is a leak. If there is gas leaking, you'll see little bubbles coming out. There we go. So we're going to turn that valve 90 degrees, plug it back in, and we are done. Hopefully this has been helpful to you and gets your stove going again too. Thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe when you get a chance.